This video demonstrates how to apply a principal component analysis. The video will be presented by Cansu, who is a data scientist and statistician. And this video is part of a series of multiple videos. So in this video she will show how to apply a PCA theoretically. In the next video she will show how to apply a PCA in the R programming language. And then afterwards she will also show how to apply a principal component analysis in Python. So without too much talk, I'll hand it over to Cansu.
Hi! Hello everyone. Today I'll talk about a variable reduction procedure which is called principal component analysis. The goal of PCA is to transform high-dimensional data to lower-dimensional while preserving as much as information within the original dataset. It is a useful method when the data is highly dimensional, hence it is hard to get a meaning out of it, and when there are correlated variables, which indicates that there is redundancy in the dataset that could be neglected. Let's illustrate how PCA achieves this. For the sake of illustration, I'll use a dataset explained by two correlated variables. On a scatter plot, you can see how the data varies with respect to variable 1 and variable 2. The goal is to explain this variation with a single variable instead. Maybe the first simple solution could be omitting one of those variables and explaining the data based on that single variable. However, this would lead to a big information loss considering the variation along the both vertical and horizontal axes. PCA does something more clever. It finds the directions of variation and defines new axes representing new variables along the larger variations. Just like as follows. In this case, the new axis should be along the largest variation. In the context of PCA, the axis is called the first principal component. Now we need the new axis values to describe our data. To do this, we should take the projections of the data points on this new axis. Here is the plot drawn based on the values of the first principal component. Please also note that the distances between the data points have slightly changed due to the dimensionality reduction, which indicates information loss. Next, we will see how to determine the directions of variations. First, we need to compute the covariance matrix of the data. Then we will decompose this matrix into the eigenvalues, referring to the magnitudes of variance in different directions, and the eigenvectors showing those directions. Here is the eigendecomposition formula that we will benefit from. The formula says when a covariance matrix is multiplied by an eigenvector, it stretches the eigenvector by a factor equal to the eigenvalue. Solving this equation, we can obtain the eigenvectors and eigenvalues, hence the directions and magnitudes of variations. Let's go over the general steps of eigendecomposition. The first step is to gather all terms on the left-hand side. Then we will factor out the eigenvector and rewrite the equation as follows. Since the non-zero eigenvectors are of interest, first, the eigenvalues are calculated by solving the determinant of the given expression. Once the eigenvalues are found, they are plugged into the equation back separately and each eigenvector is calculated. Please be aware that for each variable there is an eigenvector-eigenvalue pair. In other words, there is one principal component to be created per variable. However, only the ones explaining large variations are kept in the analysis. Let's calculate the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of our data. The formula shows that we have a square covariance matrix since we have two variables. Once we solve this equation, as previously discussed, we conclude that our first eigenvalue is equal to 175 and the second eigenvalue is 0.31. When we plug the bigger eigenvalue in our equation back, we obtain the eigenvector which is in the direction of the largest variation. This is a vector pointing to 0.45, 0.89, assuming it starts from the origin. Once we have the eigenvector, we can project our data onto this vector to obtain the first principal component values. As seen, for the projection, we need to load our data onto the new axis using the eigenvector elements, or so-called loadings. Let's calculate the second eigenvector. When the second eigenvalue is plugged into the equation, we obtain the eigenvector pointing to minus 0.89, 0.45. Please note that it is perpendicular to the first eigenvector, which means that the principal components are uncorrelated and each component represents a unique variance direction. This is indication of preventing redundancy. Similar to the previous case, we can use the eigenvector elements as loadings to obtain the second principal component values. However, this component only explains 0.2% of the variance. Therefore, it can be neglected and only the first principal component can describe the data. As a result, the dimensionality is reduced from 2D to 1D without a substantial variation loss. So far, we use a generated dataset. To show the use of PCA in practice, I will use real-life data this time. It is a dataset containing pizza samples and their nutritional content for 10 pizza brands. By employing PCA, we will explore the data and decide which brand is for us. First, we will standardize our data, which is common in practice, because PCA is sensitive to scale differences. This means that unscaled variables could contribute unequally in identifying the principal components when they are not in a common scale. This may lead to biased results. The next step is computing the covariance matrix, which is actually a correlation matrix since our data is already standardized. We can already see some relational patterns in the matrix. For instance, the moisture is negatively associated with most of the other nutrients. On the other hand, the amount of protein, fat, ash, and sodium are strongly associated, and there is a contrast between the carbohydrates and the other ingredients. Briefly, the variable relations are promising to perform a principal component analysis. Then let's do it. The first output we will evaluate is the explained variance by each component. The first row gives the absolute values, and the second and third row shows the individual and cumulative proportions. To decide on the number of components to keep, let's focus on the cumulative proportions. This output tells that if only the first principal component is used, around 60% of the variance will be explained. If the first two principal components are used, 92% of the variance will be explained. As it is a sufficient amount, we can keep the first two and neglect the rest of the components. This means we will use the loadings of the respective eigenvectors to project the data onto the new axis. After the transformation, the data will be expressed in 2 dimensions, and in the next step, we will interpret the relations in this reduced dimensional space. First, we will interpret the loadings showing variable component relations. You can see in the loading plot how the loadings are shown as vectors for each variable. You can also notice that the stronger the loadings, longer the vectors. Let's take the first principal component. We can see that, except for the carbohydrates, all nutrients are in the same direction as the component. If we only consider the stronger relations as marked, we can interpret that PC1 refers to the richness in fat, sodium, ash, and protein, and the lack of carbohydrates. If we evaluate the second component in the same way, we can say that PC2 refers to the richness of calories and the lack of moisture. We now know what the components represent. The next step is to see how the new components describe the pizza samples in a score plot. You can observe that the pizza samples of each brand are closely located, which means that each brand has its own recipe, even though some brands are clustered, indicating that they have similar recipes. For instance, brand I has low PC1 and PC2 scores, whereas brand A has high PC2 and PC2 scores. The next step is to combine these two graphs in one graph for a better interpretation. Thanks to the biplot, it is now possible to observe both the variable component relations and how the pizza samples vary with respect to the principal components. Based on this, we can tell that if one wants a fatty and crispy pizza, brand A would be a good option. If one wants a soft and non-fat pizza, brand I would be a good option. Or alternatively, if one prefers a balance of nutrients, brand B and J could be the brands. However, the pizza from brand B would still be more fat-based than brand J, which would be more carbohydrate-based. I leave the interpretation of other brands to you. If you struggle to do it, please mention it in the comments. And thank you for watching. See you in the next video explaining how to implement these steps in R.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to be informed about the next video.